All right, so we are working on study guide common assessment number 3, ratios and percents. Number 1 says 25% of blank. What is, I'm supposed to add a thing there, let me fix that. Is 12. So, like most of these questions, it's going to be percent over 100, because we always know that no matter what a number is, if it's over 100, that means it's the same as that percent. So if this was 10%, or if this was 10 over 100, we know that's 10%. If it's 20 over 100, we know it's 20%. If it's 526 over 100, we know that's 526%. Any number over 100 is that same number in a percent. So percent over 100 equals, and hopefully you guys remember this, is over of, right? Or also known as part over whole. Get familiar with that, because that's what this test is going to be focusing on a lot. I'm going to actually, okay. So now all we got to do is figure out where these numbers are. So do we have the percent? It does give it to us. It's right here, 25%. So we're going to put 25 over 100, and that equals our is over of. So do we have the of? It says of blank is 12. So we have our is because it says is 12. You guys see is right here. The number's right next to it. But we don't have our of. So what am I going to put since I don't have my of? Well, I can use any letter I want. I'm going to use B. So now we have 25 over 100 equals 12 over B. And then what you're going to do is just cross multiply to get your answer. So 25 times B just equals 25B. Any number times the variable, which are these letters right here, is just that number and next to that letter. So it's 25B. 100 times 12, well, this is a simple rule for this one too. You just put the number, which is 12, and we have how many zeros? 2 zeros. So I'm just going to add 2 zeros at the end of this. So 1200, right? And just to show you guys, I cross multiplied here by 112. Okay. 25B equals 1200. Now, what I like to say is that these letters, these variables, they're kind of mean. They don't like anybody. They want to be by themselves. So how you get it by itself is you have to divide the number that's next to it. So B wants to be by itself, so you're going to divide by 25 to get rid of that 25. So 25 divided by 25, and then if I do it on this side of the equal sign, I have to do it on this side of the equal sign. So I'm going to put it divided by 25 over here too. And the reason I did it by 25 is because 25 divided by 25 cancels each other out. And all I'm left with is good old B, right? But now I have to figure out what 1200 divided by 25 is. So I'm going to go in and out, because that's what a fraction is all about. Oops, there you go. And now think, how many times can 25 go into 120? Well, I know it goes in there 4 times to get to 100, right? And the next 25 would be 125, so that's too many, so it's going to have to be 4. So 25 times 4. Notice that I'm lining up my numbers, right? I'm going into the 120, so I'm going to line it up. I have my 4 right above that 0. 25 times 4 equals 100. Line it up again. I'm going to subtract, and 120 minus 100 just equals 20. Right? Next thing I'm going to do is bring down my 0. So this becomes 200. Now, how many times can 25 go into 200? Well, I like to think of 25 as quarters, like 25 cents, right? So there's 4 quarters in $1, so that means there would be 8 quarters in $2, which is basically what this is. So it's going to be 8. 25 times 8 equals 200. And look at that, 200 minus 200 leaves us with 0. Ignore this little decimal guy. He's not supposed to be there. Okay, So 25% of 48, that's what we got, right? Our answer's right here, is 12. And that, my friends, is number 1. Number 2 just says select all of the following that show the correct method to find 27% of 98. Well, if you were just doing 27% of 98, we know that of, let me circle it so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Of always means multiplication, right? So all you're going to have to do is 27% of 98. Well, how can I multiply 27% to 98? I need to convert it, right? So how do I convert my decimal? My percent to a decimal. All I have to do is take 27%. My decimal is usually after a number, right? If there isn't a decimal, that means it's after the number. And then I just have to move them over 2 times to the left, which leaves me with 0.27. If you want to get fancy, you can add a 0 in front. We know there's 0 whole numbers. 0.7 times whatever our number was, which was 98. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is turning it into a fraction. And we know that if it's 27%, it's always over 100. I can't say that enough. Any number over 100 is your percent. So 27 over 100 is our percent. This is 27. And you're just going to times by 98. That's our number. And that looks like those are our answers right there. But wait. C is 2.7. It wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be right because that means they just moved their decimal over 1 time, not 2 times like you're supposed to. So that's wrong. Now D says 98 times 27 over 100. Does that work? Actually, yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing as this option, which means that yes, D is also an answer for us. All right, number 3 says Ricky bakes 180 donuts every half hour. I'm going to underline that. That's a big key part of this question. Half hour. At this rate, how many donuts does he bake in 2 hours? So let's put our units here. We have donuts over hours, right? A couple ways we can get there. Let's figure out how many donuts do we have? Well, it says we have 180. And in how many hours? It says half an hour, right? I don't want to put a fraction under a fraction because that would be kind of weird. So let's turn that into a decimal. What's half turned into a decimal? This is one you guys got to remember. This is 0.5. And you can work it out. If you go in and out, 1 divided by 2, you'll end up with 0.5. That's one of those benchmark fractions and decimals that you need to memorize. Okay, so 180 divided by 0.5 is going to be how it works. How can I turn 0.5 into 2? Well, think of 30 minutes, right? Half hour is 30 minutes. So how many 30 minutes does it take to equal 2 hours? Well, 30 minutes plus 30 minutes equals 1 hour. So then 30 minutes plus 30 minutes more would equal 2 hours. So it'd be this times 4, isn't it? So we're going to multiply by 4. If I do it on the bottom, I'm going to have to do it on top. And the reason I'm trying to get to 2 is because right here it says 2 hours, right? So we're trying to turn that into 2 hours. So when this is going to equal 2, we know that already. 0.5 times 4 is going to equal 2. And 180 times 4, well, let's work it out. 180 times 4. Oops. What are you guys going to get? 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 8 is 32. I need to bring my 3 up here to regroup. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 3 is 7. So we are left with 720 donuts per 2 hours, right? And that's our answer, 720. 720 donuts. Okay, that was number 3. Oh, and the other way you could have done it is if you multiply this by 2 to make it 1 hour, so you could get your unit rate, and then multiply by 2 again. I skipped a step to make it easier for us just to go straight and multiply by 4. All right. Next question, number 4. There are 20 students in Miss Gonzalez's class. One of those students, or of those students, 13 are boys. What percent of students are girls? There are 20 students in Mr. Farina's class. Of those students, 13 are boys. What percent of students are girls? So this is the last one we're going to do right now. People are coming in. There are 20 students. Of those students, 13 are boys. So what percent of students are girls? So let's ask me for girls over students. Okay, so it's asking for girls over students. So how many students total are there? It tells us right here, 20 students. So we're going to put 20 on the bottom. For girls, it doesn't tell us, but it says there are 13 boys. So how do I figure out how many girls are? Well, it's going to be 20 minus 13. And that equals 7. So that's how we get our unit or our rates of girls to students, 7 over 20. Now it says what percent of students are girls? So there's an easy way to do this. We know percents are always out of 100. So 100 is going to be on the bottom. And on top, how do we turn 20 into 100? We just multiply by 5, right? If I multiply this by 5, I'm multiplying this by 5. 7 times 5 equals 35. And 35 over 100 means it's 35. Oh, 35. Not the answer. Percent. The end.